Hi, Daysia and Carissa. Thanks for joining us today for an interview.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. So this is kind of a family style interview approach to helping other parents and teens understand what early college is like, or what it can be like, what it has been like for you, Daysia, and for you, Carissa, as a parent. I'm a parent of an early college student as well. And my wife and I talked for a good year before jumping off and encouraging him to do that. So I know it's a big decision, and I thought maybe this format might help people understand. You know, right off the bat, I'd like to talk about, I remember, Carissa, you told me that Daysia found out about early college prior to you knowing about it. And it sounded to me like, Daysia, you might have had to kind of drag your mom along with you to be like, here, please check this out. I want to hear a little bit about that story from both of your perspective.
Sure. So I wanted Daysia to have, the high school experience that I had, and the dances and the fun. And so when she brought up the idea of doing a program where she's essentially going to college and, doing high school and college at the same time, I was really leery about it. I was not on board at all. I really wanted her to just have that high school experience and, stay young and keep that social circle. But she definitely is a different type of child and student, and really, really encouraged me to just learn more about it.
And then from my perspective, I wasn't having the best time in high school. I found that I was kind of stuck in this rut. And so me and my friend decided to talk to our parents about the early college program. And so it took me a while to kind of convince her to look into it. And once we did, I think she was on board.
Okay. Well, I find that interesting, and I'm wondering how many other teens across the country will need to kind of bring their parents along with them to convince them of the story, because I know from a lot of my friends, they come at it if their kid's not doing well in high school for whatever reason. A lot of times it's like, well, just stick with it. You have to do it. Or I know somebody whose kid wasn't getting along socially, or they just socialized differently than other kids. And so the parents said, well, that's why they need to be in high school, because they need to learn to do that. When, in my opinion, that's not really what's appropriate at all necessarily. So kind of breaking some myths about high school. You're talking, Chris, about the social aspect and the prom, and, so.
Absolutely.
So interestingly enough, you can still do the prom and sports and clubs, and even take classes at your high school campus if you want while you're doing early college. So.
Yeah, you can. I think I learned very quickly that, Daysia, she just academically is very motivated. She didn't want the drama. She has, a good friend circle, and just was content just kind of going her own path. So it was nice to see how that the smile came back after she kind of chose her own path. And for me to be able to recognize and reflect back on, my own, where I was coming from as far as where I thought she needed to be versus where really she thought she needed to be, and she was right.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you see, Carissa, looking at Daysia, kind of as you were in high school, Daysia, not enjoying it, versus the Daysia now that's in early college and thriving. Can you talk about what your perspective of watching that from the outside with Daysia, about her academic motivation, emotional and psychological health, physical health?
Yeah, so Daysia would come home and cry, be upset. Academically, she's always she's a 4.0 student. She, and I just equated it to her putting too much pressure on herself. And so I just thought, oh my gosh, she's just this teenager that, we'll get through it. We'll just kind of dig in and get through it. And it's interesting that when she chose this path, just how much just she came back to life. Her smile came back right away. She wasn't isolating in her room. She still had the socialization, but also was able to balance that a little bit better with her academics. So she didn't put that much pressure on herself or as much, and so it's really a stark contrast and the difference between the emotions for sure.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Daysia, what's your perspective on that?
I found while I was in typical high school, I did have a lot of pressure, like from people around me and from the experiences I had to face. So I wasn't the happiest, and I kind of found myself stuck in a situation where I couldn't get out. Versus now in this program, I feel like I can be more independent and I can do the things that I want to do. And I have a much tighter circle now, so I'm much happier.
Wow, that's such a great story to hear. It's why I want to do this, because there's so many people out there like yourself that don't know about this option, and when they get to it, they're like, why didn't I know about this earlier? So I was struck yesterday, Daysia, when you said something in our interview where you said you can't really remember what you learned in traditional high school. The learning environment didn't match your needs in such a large way that you're like, I don't even really know what I learned. Can you talk a little bit more about that, please?
I think a reason why I can't really remember what I was being taught is because I didn't really care. I mean, I saw high school as like a thing I just had to get past me. And so the curriculum we were learning, I just wanted to get it over with. So right when we learned something, it would go one ear out the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it sounds like you're pretty good at being a good student, so you know how that system works. Like, put it in there just long enough for the test and then leave it behind.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't care. You didn't see high school as being a relevant step with a purpose towards your greater goals.
Yeah.
Okay. Daysia, it sounds like when traditional high school wasn't going well, you just kind of tended to do what anybody would do, and that's withdraw. You mentioned like just walking the hall and just keeping your head down, and your mom just mentioned like tending to isolate in your room. Was it a stark contrast from that kind of, you mentioned feeling like depressed and anxious yesterday, when you were unhappy in high school. When you realized that there was another alternative to finish high school by doing early college, did you immediately get more hopeful, or what was that like for you?
At the start, it was really nerve-wracking because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to make friends, and it was a whole new environment with people from all different backgrounds. So I think it took a gradual amount of time to be able to step back and say, hey, I'm doing much, much better now. So,
okay. Like a couple months, a couple weeks, how long did it take? Can you put a time frame to it?
I think like 2 or 3 months.
Okay. Well, great.
Yeah. For me, I saw a change right away. And I think it was just because it was so hard to get for her to convince me that, Mom, let's just try it. And so I finally said, fine, we'll try it. What's the worst that can happen? But if this doesn't work, you're going back. So we kind of had that agreement. And I think, she felt, she felt a little empowered, it looked like. And so I think that for me, I almost saw an immediate change in how she was taking control and making her own decision. So.
Wow, that sounds like a big motivating factor. Was that a motivating factor for you, Daysia, having that control and decision?
Definitely. I think it was one of my first steps of doing something by myself. So I felt really independent.
Okay. I do want to ask you, when I'm a parent and I know that when one of my kids is struggling, it'll cause stress in my relationship with my wife. It'll cause stress with my relationship with my kids. In your relationship as a family, was Daysia, when you were suffering in traditional high school, was it affecting your relationship with your mom, and how did that change over time?
When I was in high school, a couple times it definitely did, because I isolated myself and my emotions were just out of whack. And I didn't know really what to do. And I don't think she knew what to do either. But I think the situation is much better now.
Okay. And what's your perspective on that, Carissa?
Yeah, I think, it's hard for, as a parent, it's like, okay, we've been through it. The emotions are really real at the time, but we've been through it and we know what's best, and come on, you'll get over it. Just suck it up, and then, okay, you're depressed, and we want this quick fix nowadays to these things. And really there's some things, if you're unhappy with something or you're feeling some way, just tweaking something little or doing something different can really make a big difference. And so it was like walking on eggshells and not knowing how to deal with her emotions for a while, and telling her to either suck it up or having empathy and kind of that balance. And really the answer was right there all along. I think we were working harder than we needed to on that. So, looking back, it seems like, oh my gosh, why didn't we do this sooner? But at the time, it was really, really frustrating and real. So,
absolutely, it is really frustrating and real. And with hindsight, you can say that was great. But at the time, it's scary.
Very.
It's new. It's different. Not many people do it. So yeah. I hear that. I honor you both for kind of going through that. So it's like a rite of passage of sorts. And it feels so good to be able to have gone through that and had a successful choice and be like, yay, we did it.
Yes, and more successful than what we thought. Even more.
I'm sorry, say that again. I think I interrupted you, Carissa.
It was even more successful than what we thought. I think for me, I just want her to be happy, and in the end, it's saving me thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And she just has this direction that she's focused on, where she didn't really have a direction before. It was just kind of get through it. And so it's been really cool, that part.
Yeah, totally. The get through it track would have been, Daysia, you would have just been head down in high school suffering. But now you're like, I'm going to U of O. And I'm studying neuroscience, and I have a purpose, and I saved all this money. It's a huge difference in what you did for your life by making that decision. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have any other questions. Do either one of you want to share something that I didn't really ask about, or?
No, I think one thought that just came up for me is that at first, in the parent group, part of, there's a cohort when you go through school. There was a lot of pushback, like, why would you let your daughter do that? Why are you guys doing that? Oh, I would never do that, and a lot of that. And so I lost some connection with some of those parents. But now let's fast forward a couple years, and they see Daysia and the track she's on and what she's doing and how happy and successful she is and how much money they have to pay or where they're at. And they're like, oh man, can you tell me more about that? Maybe I'll look into it for my other child. So that was really interesting to reflect on as well.
Yeah, I have a big grin on my face because I completely have gone through that with my friends as well, because we have a 14-year-old that went to early college who's 16 now. He's on like honor roll, and before he was not doing well academically, and he's just loving his life. And you get a lot of pushback from parents when you try to do something different. I think it's threatening. They're invested in the status quo. It's scary, but there's a lot of pushback. And
there is.
And so I've gotten that as well. And also now they're coming back to me, just like you mentioned, and saying, hey, my second daughter, this could be really good for them. So I don't blame them in a sense because it's such a new concept, but it's interesting how many of them come around and go, oh gosh, look at your child. Daysia's thriving.
Yeah,
like, I want to know more. So that's got to feel really gratifying in a way. Like, I told you so.
Right? That's her. Yeah. She told me so too.
Right? Daysia told everybody so.
She did. She did.
You should have some online forum or newsletter, Daysia, that's like, Daysia's I told you so. That's how you do it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.